International Women's History Month. Jas Diab on the show today.
I describe myself in a couple of words being a nerd, a mum, and you can see probably a bit of a belly. I'm a fierce advocate for diversity in STEM professions. Yeah, I went through the Australian Defence Force Academy, studied a Bachelor of Science in Nuclear Physics and Explosive Chemistry, and I spent 22 years in the Army as a combat engineer officer, Papua New Guinea, a lot of time in the US, Canada, UK. I did deploy to Afghanistan back in the early 2000s, which was a great experience. The thing I share with a lot of young women now is know your worth and be proud of that worth.
Security, nuclear security. Can you go into that? Because I'm interested. What is nuclear security? Let's go into the link between nuclear energy and mining.
Yeah, so Australia has a third of the world's uranium resources.
Women in STEM and resources.
Oh, yeah.
You like that?
Yeah, I love that.
Good. Welcome back to another episode of The Gold Room. As most people will know, it's International Women's History Month. I'm really excited to be able to have Jas Diab on the show today. 8th of March was International Women's Day. Jas, probably should have more than just one day. There's so many amazing women out there, right?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Josh, for having me.
That's all right.
I think we should share stories of women in history all the time.
For sure.
We should share stories about amazing people in history.
Exactly.
That's something that I think is really important for us to learn and grow from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Jas, we always start with the life and the times.
Okay.
Let's get into your life and times.
Yeah, so I think I describe myself in a couple of words being a nerd, a mum, and you can see probably a bit of a belly, and I'm a fierce advocate for diversity in STEM professions, so science, tech, engineering, mathematics, because historically a lot of girls don't think they're good at that and don't think it's a creative industry when it's a very creative industry. I'm the eldest of 5 kids.
Awesome. Wow. Big family?
Yeah, big family. We're all a bit nutty.
Yeah.
And I grew up on the Gold Coast, which I haven't actually gone back to visit in a long time. And my parents who will watch this will be like, yeah, you need to come home and say hi. So I had a good childhood. I mean, with 5 kids, it's hard to get attention.
Would have been hectic.
Yeah, you end up parenting the younger ones. But at 18, I essentially up and left and joined the Army. And I spent 22 years in the Army as a combat engineer officer, which taught me a lot. I grew up in Army. That taught me how to be an adult, not a civilian. It's taken me a little while to learn how to become a civilian. But, I went through the Australian Defence Force Academy, studied a Bachelor of Science in Nuclear Physics and Explosive Chemistry.
Wow, fantastic.
So I'm a nerd that likes blowing stuff up.
Yeah. So were you one of the very few women in your class?
We had a fair few women in the class, not a lot in combat engineering though.
Okay.
So historically, women who went into the Corps of Engineers were civil engineers or surveyors. They had technical skills that they could use in engineering. But I went into engineers as a scientist, essentially. I couldn't build anything. I could destroy stuff.
Awesome.
And so that kind of opened the window for combat engineers and having more women in that trade, which is super exciting because now all bars are off and women can be any trade in the Army, which is pretty awesome.
I read. I've read a lot about you, Jas, and you're a trail.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Everything I've read is great. Obviously, you already know this. You're a trailblazer of the industry, of your industry.
Thank
you. We've actually got. Obviously, this is a co-host interview as well, so this is awesome. You're going to be coming back and interviewing with some of our guests.
Yeah.
And so thank you for that. Now, one of the ladies coming in to speak with us is Christy, and she is the owner of WA Mobilisations. And when I messaged her and said, hey, look, there's been a change, I'm actually having Jas Diab come in and co-host your episode. She got all flustered. She sent me some messages saying, oh my gosh, she's a trailblazer. The content's not going to be good enough. I'm not going to. I was just, and then I just wrote back, ha, you're fangirling.
I'm like a super nerdy, goofy.
You're very easy to talk to, and that's the great thing. That's the great thing. Look, Jas, let's get into talking about breaking down barriers in a male-dominated industry.
Yeah, tough one, hey?
For sure.
Yeah, loaded question. So I spent the majority of my time in Army being the only woman in the room.
Yep.
And it's daunting, right? Especially I spent a lot of time within the special operations environment, very alpha male dominated, loud voices, overbearing personalities. And it took me a while to build my confidence to realise, hey, I'm in the room because I bring something different. I was bringing a completely different perspective, not just from my gender, but from my background. There weren't a lot of nuclear scientists in the Army who I continue learning. I love learning. We shared that earlier.
Yep.
So I spent a lot of time understanding the true problems about nuclear security and how to combat a lot of complex threats globally. And so I was brought into these rooms because I had something important. And the thing I share with a lot of young women now is know your worth and be proud of that worth and use your voice. Because it is daunting in a male-dominated industry to sometimes use your voice because you are one of one sometimes.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time as an adult to grow the confidence that you know what you're talking about. And so it took me a while to do that. And as I went further up the ranks, I realised my superpower was encouraging other people that had really important voices to speak. And this is people of any gender. I worked with some junior male soldiers who I could see really struggled in that male-dominated environment as well because they had a lot quieter personalities. And it was, how do I get their super knowledge out of their head and get them confident enough to share? And I think something I share with leaders is, how do you harness that superpower out of all your individuals in your team? Get them to speak up. Do you encourage them? Do you prompt questions? Do you give them a little bit of motivational coaching to get that out of them? Because the only way we as society will defeat complex problems is in harnessing everyone's superpower. Because if we all thought the same, spoke the same, it would be boring.
How
so
boring.
boring. But we'd only be able to solve the smallest of problems because we would all think the same. And so the thing I learnt about being the only woman in the room is that diversity of thought is actually super important.
Yep.
And we need to encourage everyone to share that goodness so that we can all be better because everyone brings something super important to the problem.
For sure.
Yeah.
Jas, when you broached on security, nuclear security, can you go into that? Because I'm interested. What is nuclear security? Surely it's not about nuclear weapons coming into the country. We're certainly not making them here.
No, Australia has probably been the biggest advocate globally for disarmament. We are a non-nuclear weapons state, proudly.
Yep.
We were used as an atomic weapons test site for a really long time. That is baggage a lot of our partners. Tests out towards Christmas Island. There was also tests around Woomera, so in South Australia. These are things that scar our community heavily. And so Australia has been a staunch advocate for disarmament and reducing nuclear weapons worldwide.
Wow.
But nuclear security is one of the 3 S's of nuclear that I use. So safety, security and safeguards, very important to make sure we can use nuclear technology peacefully. Safety is pretty obvious. It's about running reactors safely.
Yep. And also getting rid of the nuclear waste. Use our friend
doing it safely.
Nate up at Tallis.
Yeah, that's right. Being able to do it, understand the science and engineering behind it, and manage those technologies in a really safe manner. And the nuclear industry is one of the safest industries in the world because of that focus on safety. Security and safeguards are different. Safeguards is an international verification program through the International Atomic Energy Agency. It really makes sure that countries don't try to start their own nuclear weapons program. And
Do they?
Oh, yeah. So countries like North Korea, Iran, we've seen them try to sneak ways into producing highly enriched uranium or plutonium for weapons production. Yep. And that is an international regime.
Are they getting? Have their own uranium?
Well,
or are they having it shipped in from other countries?
yeah, it depends on the country and how
Okay.
they're getting access to it, and having the guise of a civil power program is often a way that they can get access to material. We could talk about safeguards and some of the countries that are interesting case studies for hours, because it's fascinating and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah.
But because of this verification program, the International Atomic Energy Agency has been able to call out these countries,
Cool.
which is awesome to keep us safe from weapons being proliferated.
Yep.
Nuclear security kind of sits in the middle, and it tries to make sure that any nuclear material does not go into the hands of terrorist organisations or countries that are trying to do something non-peacefully with nuclear. And so it involves understanding where material's housed, how it's being housed, how it's being accounted for, and a lot of people go, oh, just put it behind a fence and have someone with a gun there. Like, it could be more sophisticated than that to be able to deter threats from trying to get nuclear material or information associated with nuclear technologies. So it's not necessarily just about material or the radiological sources. All of that is encompassed under nuclear security. And it's making sure that that security works closely with nuclear safety, so the systems don't impact one another. Because if you have any critical infrastructure and you retrofit a plan afterwards, it costs you money and it'll impact other systems.
For sure.
And so I work quite closely with safety designers to make sure that the safety system and the security systems work together,
Yep.
rather than, against each other.
So with AUKUS, you'd be heavily involved in that?
Well, I'm spending a lot of time educating people on nuclear with the introduction of AUKUS, which is exciting because for a long time I think the Australian nuclear community thought what they were doing was a bit taboo, and I'd tell people, oh, I'm a nuclear engineer, and they'd go, oh, why are you doing that? Like, what a waste of time. But now I get to talk quite openly to lots of audiences about nuclear matters, to just help lift nuclear literacy, because I find nuclear science fascinating. How atoms interact to create other elements is amazing.
Yeah, we had. I know you saw the episode with Mark Schneider. He is when you said I'm a nerd. He sat in the same seat telling me the same thing. I'm a nerd. I was just like, mate, you are fucking smart.
So Mark and I have nerded out on several occasions.
I can only imagine.
And I can imagine people at the cafe near us are like, what the hell are these two weirdos talking about?
Yeah, no, I could certainly imagine when Mark said, "Oh, we should get Jas on my episode," and I said to him, "I actually think it was in a joint message. Even you were in it," and I said, "I don't think I can just sit in the room with two really smart people being the dummy." You know?
No, you would call us out and go, "You're just making stuff up now."
No, I certainly wouldn't. Let's go into the link between nuclear power, nuclear energy, and mining.
Yeah, so Australia has a third of the world's uranium resources, and we have some of the best uranium in the world. Globally, a lot of countries are tripling their nuclear capacity by 2050 to reduce their carbon emissions, because nuclear is seen as that energy form that is clean but also reliable, and it's quite energy dense. Like uranium, a small thing of uranium is the equivalent of a ton of coal. So you can just harness so much energy out of that small amount of material. And we have a lot of it.
Yeah.
And so the link here in Australia is, how do we support the global uplift of clean energy generation? And our mining sector is a really important part of that through uranium. Nuclear doesn't use a lot of other critical minerals as much as some of the other energy forms do. But of course, Australia has a really great resource of critical minerals as well that are used in high-end electronics and batteries and that sort of stuff. And so all of that intertwines as well. And so I think there's a big connection between nuclear and the mining sector for sure.
Yeah, I want to give a little plug out to Jonathan Fisher.
Jono.
Because,
Hey, Jono.
Hey, Jono. Because, shoot, I've never seen anyone more passionate. Obviously, you know, he's got cauldron energy.
Yeah.
But he knows his stuff.
Yeah.
He's a smart man, and I think I'd hope that with the new government or changes that we will see, hopefully there can be uranium mining back in Western Australia.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important for Australia to understand, no matter what people's ideological thoughts are on nuclear energy, the rest of the world sees it as a key part of their transition to clean power.
Yep.
Australia can have a role to support that clean energy production through provision of uranium. We are silly to not try and support that. We have been supporting the coal industry and we still support the gas industry for such a long time. Uranium is just the same.
Even
but now
with
it's in green energy.
nuclear power, it's even with nuclear power stations that will eventually be built. We know that it will eventually happen.
Yeah.
The coal industry is not going to be dead and dying in the next 10, 15 years.
No.
It will continue.
Yeah.
And I think maybe some of these people are saying, "Oh, what about job losses? What about these? What about the coal mining industry? It's not going to stop.
No.
And not going to stop for a long time.
No, there are a lot of countries that are still heavily reliant on coal. I mean, we're still heavily reliant on coal. It is what keeps our grid stable, both on the West Coast and the East Coast. Coal is the backbone of that. And people who don't understand our energy system can assume that a solar panel or a wind turbine can replace the same thing that a large-scale power generator like a coal plant can do. And the science and engineering just doesn't match up. Yep. There is a place for renewables. I am not anti-renewables at all. Yep. I think domestically we should be embracing renewable power.
Yep.
But if we want industry in Australia, if we want to smelt alumina, if we want to have our own copper, if we want to process our own iron ore so that we have our own fabrication,
for sure,
it needs power. And then the introduction of data centres and AI centres that are very power intensive, and they can't
those
have...
next DC
buildings
are popping. They're amazing, and they're popping up everywhere.
Yeah,
it's wild.
They are so energy hungry,
yep.
and because it's all huge computers that are highly sensitive to temperature and frequencies, it can't have a fluctuating energy grid. It needs something that's reliably there 24/7, 365, which coal does at the moment and nuclear could do into the future, which is why you see the Amazons, the Microsofts all buying nuclear reactors.
Heavily backing it.
Yeah, big time.
Lessons from the military and the security and nuclear security.
Yeah, lessons from the military. I learnt so much from the military. And I mean, I did 22 years in uniform and I left on good terms. Like it was time for me to move on and focus on family. And I learnt so much. I learnt my own strengths. It taught me to be resilient, have a voice. What else did it teach me? Oh, the importance of mateship and friendship, right?
Yeah.
My army mates are still some of my closest friends, especially the people I deployed with and the people I went through basic training with.
Yeah.
Because there's so much adversity, you just create these friendships for life, and there are jokes that will live on forever just through that mateship group. Some of them might not be appropriate nowadays.
Well, I've seen that over the years at mining too.
Yeah.
You know, what was laughed about in the crib room 10 years ago is not ever to be spoken in crib room now.
Similarities, right? Yeah. Especially FIFO workers. You're away from home, you're away from the comforts of life, but you've got this great set of mates.
Yep.
That you can have a joke with, and they'll see you at your best and they will see you at your worst.
Yeah.
And
a disgruntled employee, or a happy employee. You just never know.
Yeah. I mean, I lost a sister to suicide while I was serving, and I was in a high-stress job at the time, and it was my army mates that wrapped their arms around me and helped me work through that. It's taken a long time to work through that. If we were doing this podcast, if we were doing this podcast 10 years ago, I wouldn't have even mentioned that to you. But they've helped me see a way through it and work through grief and realise how important mental health is and supporting your mates and speaking openly and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, it's so powerful, but it can actually save people's lives.
Yeah,
and I wish I had that skill earlier, but my mates in the military helped me work through that too. So hopefully that answered that. I learned lots of lessons.
Yeah, that's good. Well, so what about travel in your role, like international travel?
Yeah, so both in the military and post-military life, I've done a lot of overseas travel and seen some amazing cultures. I was actually last week talking with some of the local government ladies around the Rockingham area about lessons I learnt when I worked with the Papua New Guinean Defence Force.
Yeah.
Because they're such a close neighbour. They have a love for footy like we do here, but their culture is completely different to us, and how they approach problems and solve problems is unique and something I think we can learn as a culture. It's very much more relaxed. It's very collaborative in a way. And
Would you say more of a community feel?
very much a community feel, which I think is something we lack sometimes in Australia. We're sometimes very individualised and we need to do this, we need to get this done now, here, now. And you're like, well, do we need to rush? Like, what's the rush? Can we not talk a bit more about it and figure out the best way to do it, that it's not a win-lose situation, that it, hey, could be a win-win situation for everybody, and compromise. And so, yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Papua New Guinea, a lot of time in the US, Canada, UK. I did deploy to Afghanistan back in the early 2000s, which was a great experience, a stunning country. Pity it's just run by a bunch of not so stunning people.
Yeah. Politics.
Yeah, politics. But Afghan people are beautiful. And that's an amazing culture that's been riddled by war for almost its entire existence. But I almost wonder, imagine what would happen if they had some strong democratic leadership. It could be an adventure super playground, because the mountains are huge and they get amazing snow in the winter and warm summers and full of poppy fields.
Women in STEM and resources.
Oh, yeah.
You like that?
Yeah, I love that.
Good.
Super important. We see a lot of young girls, once they hit high school, think that they're not good at math or science. And I don't know where they get this thought from. They just say, I'm not
Social
good
media.
at it, potentially. And so because they don't study those subjects in high school, it limits their ability then when they leave school and try to go into STEM or resources sector. You see that with trades as well. Women that think, oh, no, I'm not very good at that. And then you're like, but you can be. We need women in every industry, because there's not enough humans on Earth to run the planet if we're not all doing these jobs. And STEM and resources jobs are super, super important for us to thrive as a society, right? So I try to encourage young girls that, you know what, are you super creative? You could be an amazing engineer, because engineers are complex problem solvers that use creativity to solve that problem. They can be designing roads, bridges, a new way to mine a resource, and they need creativity to do that. Scientists need to be creative as well, because they're trying to solve
Look
problems.
outside the box.
Yeah. And so I'm really passionate about how do we encourage more young girls to realise they've got this potential, that they can do anything they put their mind to. And if they love cosmetics, you know what? They probably love science, because cosmetics is really around science. And how do you mix chemicals to get different colours or different reactions with your skin, because you don't want it to react with your skin. But I just think that there's a lot that we need to do, and I say the we for a lot of senior women that are working in the STEM sector, to encourage young girls to give it a go and give them that confidence, because I don't know how they get this lack of confidence, but it breaks my heart that they think they can't do a whole heap of things when they haven't even given it a go.
I reckon it has to be social media, right?
Yeah.
But
societal norms and putting that
take
pressure on them.
Yeah.
Thinking you need to be an A+ student at math to be a scientist. You don't.
Yeah. Would that come down to some of the teaching processes that they have at school?
Oh, potentially. The stereotypical way of learning might not resonate with a lot of girls. I mean, I studied physics and I failed math.
Really? Wow.
I'm a physicist that can't do math.
There's calculators though, right?
Exactly.
You know, so
yeah, but I can understand how physics works. And so when I went to do nuclear engineering, I could do the math because I could picture how it all worked together. And I had a calculator and spreadsheets that would help me do the numbers part.
Yep.
But it's like you don't need to be the best at everything to do a job. There's a lot of resources out there that help you.
And there's a lot of people that you can also, ask questions to, rely
Definitely.
on. So that is mining, actually. That's mining. That's the resources sector.
Yep.
Not everyone's great at everything.
You can't
Some
be.
people think they are. But far out.
Fakers.
Yeah. Anyone who thinks they're best at everything has a problem.
Yeah, that's it.
Global nuclear perspectives
Yeah.
versus Australia. I threw that in there.
Are we here for a couple of hours?
I sat there and I thought, it's a loaded question.
Yeah.
But there's probably no one better to answer it.
So
Because you've travelled internationally, you've sat on the international stage talking about nuclear energy, and then you've also had to see what is going on for the last 22 years in Australia. Also the changes with AUKUS, we're getting these nuclear submarines, and it's obviously a political power play at the moment.
yeah, it's unfortunate that the politics is involved in Australia because globally a lot of countries have used nuclear power for 70 odd years. And Australia has been a nuclear nation for 70 years. Yes. We have had research reactors out in Sydney at Lucas Heights, which produce nuclear medicines to help people treat cancers, also diagnostic tests. Fun fact, every Aussie will likely get 2 nuclear medicine procedures in their lifetime. And so we have done this for a long time, just in the shadows.
And we're good at it.
We have regulators in safety, security and safeguards that are recognised internationally as being the best in the world.
Awesome.
So we are good at nuclear. However, in the 90s, due to politics, nuclear was banned in Australia. And that decision, I think, has written our history in a way that's really hard to undo now, where we have ideology trumping facts and evidence that is going to help us support our climate transition. Whereas in the rest of the world, less Italy. Italy also has had a legislative ban on nuclear power. But the rest of the world, nuclear is just another technology that they can harness. And there are a lot of countries where they don't even really talk about it because it just happens in the background. And so France is a really great example. They, 50 years ago, invested heavily in their nuclear power program, and they have one of the cleanest energy grids in the world because it is a combination of nuclear with solar and wind.
Awesome.
And because of that, their industry thrives. They have cheap electricity. They actually export a lot of their nuclear power to other parts of Europe. Yep. And so countries like Germany, who've switched off their coal, had nothing to back it up, canned a lot of their nuclear power plants, are now getting nuclear power out of France at an inflated rate because if you're France, why not?
Yeah. You know Mike Cannon-Brookes?
Yeah.
So he's the lean, green eco warrior.
Yep.
Just bought a jet the other day. Don't know if you saw the news.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, which is awesome. Lucky for him. So he has he's building this big solar plant up on the Northern Territory.
Yeah.
He's going to be shipping off power to Singapore.
Yeah.
So
Which is really hard to do.
Really hard to do.
Yeah.
So why don't we do the same thing but just look at a far greater energy source?
Yeah.
Something that's going to be running 24 hours a day rather than just the 12.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Because when you transmit electricity, you have loss in that line because that's just how energy works. Yep. And so when you already have a really dissipated energy form in the way of solar, you need lots of panels over a large area. You're having loss as you're pulling that together. You're then having loss as you're transmitting that to wherever it needs to go.
Yep.
And it's not very efficient. So the engineer in me is like, well, you want it to be efficient. And efficiency is having energy density. And energy density is things like coal, gas, nuclear, that you get energy from a smaller amount of material. And so a lot of countries globally are using nuclear, and like I said earlier, they're tripling their capacity because they want to reach their climate goals faster.
Yep.
And we're unfortunately being left out of that discussion because of politics and ideology. I really enjoy that a lot of Aussies are nuclear curious, and I have some amazing conversations with people who legitimately just want to understand, what is nuclear power? How does it work? What is its safety record? Would we have a Chernobyl? Would we have a Fukushima? Because these are all great conversations we should have.
You just had one the other day about Fukushima,
Yeah,
didn't you?
about Fukushima. I was lecturing at the University of New South Wales, their nuclear engineering course, and we talk openly about Fukushima. And a lot of people don't realise nobody died from the nuclear accident at that site. What killed people in Japan was an earthquake and tsunami that was the biggest that was ever seen in Japan and one of the top 5 ever globally. Yep. And the accident, the earthquake itself didn't cause an issue to the nuclear power plants. They shut down safely as they're designed. But the tsunami, that was plus 14 metre waves that just broke all the design characteristics that had been put around that plant and seawalls and completely flooded the emergency diesel generators that are at the bottom of the nuclear power plants, design flaw, so lesson learnt out of there, which meant they couldn't keep them cool as designed. And so there are a lot of things that the nuclear industry learns from its accidents.
For sure. Just like any industry.
Exactly. Yeah. And so don't have diesel backup generators in a place that's likely to be flooded. Put them up on higher ground. Super simple things like that that can prevent.
But they would have been designed in such a way originally, knowing that that was going to be safe at the time.
The
or that
10
was
metre seawall would keep them safe from large waves. They were never expecting a 14 metre plus tsunami wave. Like, that is huge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it went beyond what it had been designed for. And so, like, I'll talk to anyone who wants to talk about nuclear. They'll get bored by the end.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, but we need to talk about those accidents. And Chernobyl's another one. A lot of people died in Chernobyl, but that was a very different kind of accident. You're talking about a very old Russian design reactor that didn't use things like gravity in a smart way. In a reactor core, use control rods to kill a reaction. And on modern reactor designs, they're gravity fed. So if they lose power, they'll just drop into the core, kill the reaction. This Russian RBMK design is going against gravity to put control rods in. So when they have an accident and they lose power, it's really hard to kill that reaction off.
Yep.
It was also about an engineer pushing a reactor past its design parameters and breaking a lot of safety protocols, things that the industry couldn't picture doing now. There's a lot of passive safety features put in a reactor to prevent operators from being able to do that. And so it's building trust with the community that the industry has learnt from these mistakes and they don't want these accidents to occur. Like, nobody wants that to happen. But we want reliable energy and we want it cheaply. So that's why the world...
cost of living in Australia is wild.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
At the pump, at the, your power bill, in the grocery store.
Yeah.
It's out of control. So I think, look, in saying that, a nuclear power station built or signed off tomorrow is still 10 to 15 years away from being built. So it's not, while it's important to start now, we're not going to see anything realistically for, there's differing opinions on this, but 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Right?
And that requires all sides of Parliament to be on board.
Yep.
Because it can't be a one-sided policy. That'll never work. And it's one of the few things the American government actually agrees on. Both sides of Parliament agree on nuclear. And in America, it's a very polarised system, much like us. Yep. But they agree on nuclear because it's good for their country. And I'm like, when can we get to that point here in Oz?
We will.
We will have to.
Yeah, eventually. Leadership and mentoring in tough industries. What do you think?
Yeah, I think mentors are super important at all levels.
Yes.
And it's a really personal thing, mentoring. I once had someone come up to me and say, I'm your mentor. I'm like, I don't know if we lead the same. I don't know if I want you as my mentor.
Was it in the army?
Yeah, it was in the army.
Was it a man or a woman?
It was a woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little bit abrupt.
It is abrupt. We didn't lead the same.
No.
We had very different personalities. But I've always had mentors in my career. Some have been formal relationships. I approached one female senior army officer and I asked her to be my mentor. It was really awkward, like we were on a date. I was like, "Ma'am, will you be my mentor?" And she was just so lovely about it. And I was able to just ask her the things I didn't feel comfortable asking my boss.
Yep.
And test out ideas. And so that helped my leadership style. But I've also had mentors in the nerd space, my technical space, to help me learn and grow technically, because I love using my brain. And I find when I'm not using my brain, I'm a bit dangerous.
Oh, no. Why? In what way? In what way?
Oh, I become a bit cheeky, a bit of a practical joker. And my daughter's teacher asked me, "Oh, why is your daughter so cheeky?" I'm like, "Oh, because she's mine." Didn't want to admit that, hey, maybe that's a trait she got from me.
Yeah, I actually have had a few situations at the school where my eldest son had done something and I thought, that's unacceptable. And I thought, oh, shit, I did the same bloody thing,
There's the mirror. And so I think finding mentors that help you with whatever the challenge is at the time is really, really important.
Yeah.
It takes being vulnerable to ask for that support.
I've reached out to people in the industry
Yep.
for a mentorship, and I've been knocked back a couple of times.
Which is tough, but mentoring takes work. And
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the couple of people that I have asked are extremely busy.
Yeah.
I can and then when they've said to me, oh, well, one particular gentleman said, and he's a CEO of a mining company, he said, "Josh, I'll email you back when I'm not so busy." And then in the coming months, I think it was like 3 or 4 months later, there was some big merger and acquisitions going on, and then I understood. I was just like, "Oh shit, that's why you can't deal with me, because you're pulling off $1 billion deals." Okay, mate, fair enough.
That's okay, I can wait. That's all good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm still here. No, that's cool.
But it's so powerful. And there are some formal mentoring networks, especially in the STEM field, that young people can get involved in, and I encourage them to do that. Find someone whose career you think you want, you like their career path, or you think that their style is similar to yours, or find someone completely different if you want to learn some different skills. I always found that I needed mentors that had a similar leadership style to me, especially in the military, because I wasn't a very strict, hardline leader. I was a bit more compassionate, and I really enjoy the human interaction and learning more about people rather than just telling them what to do. Even though in times of war, that's definitely a leadership trait we need. You need those directive leadership styles. But in peacetime, you actually want to just grow and become super awesome team. So, very important. Highly recommend finding a mentor and one that works for you.
I'm going to keep trying.
And if it doesn't work, you can still break up with your mentor. That's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to have it like pulling teeth and just stare at each other awkwardly.
Jas, this is not even on my list, but are you, as a civilian, what do you think about those Chinese warships over in the east coast of Australia?
Yeah, so good one.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I just thought to myself, I was like, with your security knowledge, you're not in the army anymore. What do you think? And what do you think surely it wasn't a Virgin flight, a pilot that just suddenly radioed into Australia saying, "Hey guys, there's some
warships off the coast."
Surely not, right?
No, there's enough monitoring of Australia going on that they would know, but it's not necessarily something that the public needs to be aware of straight away.
Of course.
And Australia has a great national security framework, and people should trust our Defence Forces doing what it needs to do.
Yep.
But I think Jas's opinion, this is China showing that it has reach, that it has built a big defence force that has the reach globally. And for a long time, we have been the lucky country down south, and not out of anything we've done, out of our sheer geography, that we are so far away from everyone else that it's hard for people to come to us.
Yeah.
That's changed. Militaries now have the power, and things like nuclear-powered warships and submarines have global reach.
Yep.
The only thing that prevents them from going forever under the ocean or on the surface of the ocean is the humans on board that need food,
Yep.
right? Food and light if they're submariners, or although you met Mark,
Yeah,
they're a little bit wackadoo, right?
He's crazy. He's so awesome. He's
Yeah.
coming back to. I actually spoke to him the other day. He's coming back. We've got.
Awesome.
It's quite hard trying to tie in someone like Mark with some of the mining suppliers and mining service providers, because as you know, we're taking businesses from the mic to the mine.
Yep.
And so trying to tie. I'm thinking, okay, is that going to work? Is that going to work? There's a lot that goes into it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But Mark's super smart. Yeah. Super awesome. So awesome.
It's one of my nerd buddies. It's great.
Nice. Look, Jas, that's actually we've covered some ground today.
We've covered a lot.
I know.
Oh, my goodness.
It's been it's going to be a ripper episode. Thank you very much. What I would like is I'd like you to share some words of wisdom, right? Not to me, but if you feel comfortable, I mean, you can, obviously it's to me, but look into the camera and then, or whoever, you can just tell me. But some words of wisdom to some young girls at school, some young girls at primary school, at high school.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the teachers are going to watch this, or maybe you share this to a high school and say, hey, listen, sat down and this is exactly what needs to be said at the high school level. We need not just really smart people, we just need more women in industry, right?
We do. And I guess my advice to these young girls is you can do anything. Nobody can tell you what you can do. You do what you're passionate about. And if you're passionate about it, like I was super nerd passionate about nuclear science, you will forge that path and find good people, find your village that will prop you up and support you. If people tell you you can't, you don't need them in your life. Push them aside. There's enough people in the world that will be there to support you, and you can do it. And once you get out the other side, you'll have an amazing career. I mean, if you are passionate about something, it doesn't feel like work. It's fun.
Yeah.
And you meet other nerds and weirdos along the way and you have the best time. So do it. Just figure out what you love and do it.
Jas, that was beautiful. I actually looked down. I was like, shit, that's giving me goosebumps.
You can do it, Josh.
Oh, thank you, Jas. Thank you, Jas. Listen, thank you very much for coming in, spending the time with us. I'm really looking forward to working with the team to get this episode out. Thank you very much for coming in and doing an episode. Christy will actually be here very soon. It'll be in the next week. So we've been able to tie them together in the same day, which is new and awesome for us. So, look, thank you very much for tuning into another episode on The Gold Room. Obviously, you would have loved this episode. Make sure you drop some comments down in the...
nice comments.
Very nice comments. And be sure to tune in for the next episode. Thank you.